Hi there and welcome to Data Science Raw TV with me, Gary Short. Welcome to episode 4, the one about curiosity. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about curiosity. And that is by far the most important skill or personality trait that you're going to have as a data scientist. Now, I know you can go on to all different data science sites and they will teach you about Python this and Jupyter Notebooks that and linear regression and decision forests and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, sure, that's all really important, right? But the important thing is that that stuff can be taught, right? And curiosity can't be. Curiosity is a personality trait that you've got. And to be a good data scientist, you must just naturally be curious. And by curious, what I mean is if you're watching the television and you hear something, or you're on Facebook, or you see it on Twitter, or you're reading the paper, or you're reading a technical document or whatever, and somebody states a fact and you go, I don't think that's true. I'm going to check that out. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Now, we can teach you the I'm going to check that out part, but we can't teach you to be curious in the first place. Okay, so very, very important. And the good thing about curiosity is it can strike any time. So take the example we're going to look at today. For example, it's Monday the 6th of July now. I was sitting having my breakfast on Friday the 3rd of July, 8:30 in the morning, drinking my cup of tea, and all of a sudden, Scotland's Justice Minister comes on the television and he says something that really sparks my curiosity. So first of all, let's listen to what he said.
Is in a different trajectory in terms of the progress against the virus. So Scotland's point of prevalence, which is the rough estimate of the number of the percentage of the population that's infectious, our point of prevalence is 0.037. It's 5 times lower than what England's point of prevalence is.
Okay, so why did that spark my curiosity? Well, first of all, let's kind of clarify what he was talking about. Now, he mangled the phrase a little bit, and that's acceptable because he's the Justice Minister. He's not anything to do with medical or science or anything like that. So what he said was point of prevalence. Okay, what he actually meant was point prevalence. All right, so point prevalence is the prevalence of an infection in a population at a particular point in time, so on a particular day, right? So that's what he's talking about. And what he said was that Scotland's point prevalence was 0.037, and that was 5 times lower than England's. So two things strike me about that, two things make me curious. Firstly, it's the little linguistic trick that he used there. So the linguistic trick that he used was he quoted Scotland's figure in absolute terms. He said it was 0.037. But when he spoke about England's rate, he implied it was 5 times greater. I mean, what he actually said was he said Scotland's rate was 5 times lower, but that's the same as saying England's is 5 times higher. So when he quoted Scotland's rate, he said 0.037 absolute terms. When he quotes the English rate, he says it's 5 times greater. And that's a little linguistic trick, because what he's done there by saying 5 times is he's actually jumped 2 orders of magnitude. Scotland 0.037, England 5 times greater, right? And now that makes it sound like there's a big difference, but actually when you just do the arithmetic, he could also have said Scotland's rate is 0.037 and England's rate is 0.185, because that's the same thing. But both of those sound quite small and could be ignored. But by saying Scotland's is 0.037 and England's is 5 times greater, then he makes it sound like that's an important thing. And that's should always spark your curiosity, because people will often do that when they're trying to emphasize a point that isn't really there. So immediately I think, oh, why did you phrase it that way? And the second thing that is curious about that is this idea that England's rate is 5 times higher. I mean, that just doesn't feel truthy, you know. We're on the same landmass. Scotland is following very similar policies to England. I mean, slightly delayed in some circumstances, but broadly the same thing. So for one country to be 5 times, to have the reservoir of infection 5 times larger than the other, doesn't feel truthy. Could absolutely be true, but it doesn't feel truthy, and so that sparked my curiosity. So having had our curiosity sparked in that way, let's go ahead and check that out. So we always need to form a question when we're trying to do data science, and whether it's a business question or a research question or whatever. So our question for today is the Justice Secretary correct when he says that Scotland's infection rate of 0.037 is 5 times smaller than England's rate? Let's go check it out. So a good place to start when we're looking at this is to answer the question, did the First Minister expand on the Justice Minister's ideas during her daily briefing at lunchtime? So let's just have a quick look at her speech. So here's her speech for the 3rd of July. And if we quickly just check, did she mention prevalence? Prevalence. Okay, so she did. So she says here, for example, we assess the prevalence of the virus in Scotland right now is 5 times lower than it is in England. Okay, so she said, she restated that claim. In fact, she used the exact same words as the Justice Secretary did in the morning. She says the prevalence of the virus in Scotland right now is 5 times lower than it is in England. So this right now, this gives us an idea, because as we said before, the Justice Secretary was talking about point prevalence. So point prevalence is a moment in time. So she says right now. So we can assume that that is either the 3rd of July, the day she's talking about, or it's the 2nd of July, the day before. Okay, so that's good. So let's check to see if she's going to tell us anything more about that. So let's see, is there anything to do with data on the page? No. Anything to do with the methodology? No. Anything maybe to do with the results? No. Okay, so it looks like we're not going to get any more information about what the Justice Secretary said in the First Minister's speech on Friday, but that's just on Friday, so it doesn't mean that she didn't mention it. She hasn't mentioned it some other time in some of her other speeches. I mean, I haven't seen them all, obviously. So what we want to do is we want to get a list of all of the First Minister's speeches, and we want to be able to search them. So if we go here and we do a bit of a search, we can find actually that the Scottish Government website here does maintain a list of all of the First Minister's speeches. That looks good. Obviously this is all the First Minister's speeches, and obviously we're not interested in all of them, but it does look like that her daily briefings do have this same kind of template in the naming convention, and it's got COVID-19 in it, and that is good. So what we want to do is we want to capture all of these speeches and we want to search them. So what we're going to do, first of all, let's do that. Let's grab our Jupyter notebook here. And so the first thing that we're going to do here is we are going to define a function where we are going to pass in a URL and we'll get back the page source. So we pass in URL and we get back HTML. Next thing we're going to do before we actually hit anybody's websites is we are going to be good internet citizens, and we're going to make sure that the Scottish Government website allows us to programmatically scrape information off of it. And the way we do that is we check for a file called robots.txt in the root of the website, and this part here is the root of the website, and this is the file robots.txt. And every website that you visit on the internet will have a robots.txt. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull that back, we're going to ask for that information, we're going to pull it back, and we're going to check it here to make sure we are allowed actually to pull information off. The bits that we are interested in is this bit at the front, where it says all user agents are allowed, so that's good, including our software one. The only thing that's disallowed here is this part here, which says, hey, you can read our website programmatically if you want, but hey, please don't go anywhere near the search. Please don't hammer our search programmatically. And that's fine. We've no intentions of using their search facility. That's the only thing they disallow. We are good to go. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to that website I already showed you, this website here, and we're going to grab the list of speeches. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab them all here, and then what we're going to do is for each of those we've grabbed, we're going to pull out the href, and the href is the actual URL of the URL of the individual speeches. And then once we've got them all, down here what we're going to do is we're going to filter it for only the ones that have got COVID-19 in it, because we said we're not interested in all of the First Minister's speeches ever. We're just interested in her daily briefings on COVID-19. And then what we're going to do is here we're going to do a bit of a checksum just to make sure we capture them all. So there's 76 speeches here, so that's fine. So we want to make sure we grab 76 speeches. Then what we do is for every link in that collection of links that we've got, we're going to grab out to the website, grab that particular link, and then what we're going to do is we're going to grab all of the paragraphs of text. We're going to grab all of the paragraphs of text. We're going to strip out any white space at either end, and then we're going to add it to this string, which eventually is going to have all of the text in the speech. Once we've got that, we're going to escape all of that text, because what we need to do is we need to build an XML file, and some characters have special meaning inside an XML file, and so what we want to make sure is that if the First Minister's speech includes any of those special characters, then we've escaped those so we don't break our XML. What we're going to do now is once we've captured all of the words in the First Minister's speeches, we're going to create an XML document from that. I'm going to create an XML document because that's just easier for Solr to index. So we're only really going to create two fields inside our XML document. We're going to create one called ID, and that is just a unique identifier for each of the files that we've got. And in this case, the unique identifier is very straightforward and simple. What we're going to use is we're going to use the URL. Every page on the internet has a unique URL. You can't have two pages on the internet with the same URL, otherwise the internet wouldn't know which one to serve. So that becomes our unique identifier, and we're going to put it here in the ID field. And the next field that we're going to create is a field called speech, and that's cool, and all we're going to do here is dump all of the First Minister's text for each of the speech in that. And then we are going to write out the contents to a file. And we're going to have a bunch of XML files, and then we're going to run the Solr indexer over those bunch of XML files. Pretty straightforward. So once we've done that, we've actually captured all of the First Minister's speeches, and we can search them now to see if she's mentioned this kind of thing before. So let's go to our Solr admin page. I'm going to set the default field for searching as speech. We'll set that to 76 just in case everything comes back. And actually, that's a really good point. We set the checksum, but we didn't bother to check it. So let's just actually make sure we've got them all. So there we go. Number of documents in the corpus is 76. So we do have all of the First Minister's speeches, because that 76 number there matches the number of links that we pulled off the index page. So having made sure we've got them all, now we can go back and query that. Go back, set the query to be the default field for querying to be speech. We'll put in 76 as the return. And then we can query this. So what we'll do is we will query for prevalence. Let's see if that reckons we've spelt it wrong. We have. It's prevalence, Gary. Turn on highlighting, because what that will do then is it won't just tell us the number of documents that actually have that phrase in it. It'll actually highlight whereabout in the document it is, so we can actually read and we get some idea of the context before we are interested in that. So let's see if this applies. Okay, so she mentions this on speech 14. She says we're using NHS testing to monitor the purposes and to test the prevalence. Okay, so that's point prevalence, because each NHS testing gives you the test data for each of the days, and so they're looking at the prevalence for the days. And this is obviously Friday speech. We for example, we assessed that the prevalence. And we already saw that, but there's no information with regards to the data. Again, hammering down the incidence and prevalence of that virus. No mention of the data there. number has fallen. Okay, no information about methodology or anything like that. Our modelling also shows that prevalence of the virus is reducing. Last week, you might recall that. Yeah, okay. So prevalence is mentioned a number of times, but nothing to do with the methodology or the modelling or where the results might be or anything like that that we can take a look. So let's search for methodology. Let's see if we've got anything there. Nothing there. Let's check for let's check for incidence modeling. Okay, let's check that. Nothing. Let's check prevalence modeling. Prevalence. Let's spell it right this time. Nope, got it wrong every time. Well done, guy. At least we're consistent, eh? Check that. Okay, nothing. So it doesn't look like we're going to get any more information on this point prevalence data that both now the Justice Secretary and the First Minister have been talking about. So in that case, if we can't find it there, let's check the national records for Scotland. Let's check point of prevalence. Nothing. Infection study, let's try that. Okay, again, nothing on the site. All right, let's try the Scottish Government's website itself. Okay, let's try COVID incidents. Okay, so we've got a few. These are First Minister's speeches. No, those two are First Minister's speeches. We've already searched those, so we don't have that. So prevalence of COVID. Let's check that. Updated advice for people shielding. Nope. Again, First Minister's speeches. We've already searched that. Nope, nothing there. Let's try let's try infection study. Okay, 8 international clinical research. That's 2007, 16 September 19. No, return to full-time schooling. No, COVID antibody testing. That's not really it. No, how to spot statement, and then that is one of the First Minister's tests. So no, so it doesn't look like the information is published here. So let's try the Public Health Scotland website. So let's try COVID prevalence. No, let's. I'm clearly going to spell that wrong every single time now. Nope. Infection study. No. All right. So that's a little bit annoying. It looks like the Justice Secretary and the First Minister are quoting a study that isn't published anywhere. So it's not on the National Records of Scotland website, it's not on the government's website itself, and it's not on the Scottish Government website, and it's not on the Public Health Scotland website. So that's a little bit irritating. So we can't really check out this 0.037 number. That's a little bit annoying. What about the English one? Well, the English number does. On the Office of National Statistics website, we have this coronavirus COVID-19 infection survey pilot, 2nd of July 2020. So this is the most up-to-date one, even though it's just a pilot, certainly. It's the only figures that England publish, and at least they're publishing their figures. So here's the main point. So how can the data in this bulletin be used? So it can be used for estimating the number of cases in the community in England, including cases where people did not have symptoms. And that's pretty much what we want to do, right? So we can use this study for that. That's good. Let's scroll down, see if we can find any results. All right, so here is the results in figure 1. So what have we got here? What we have is estimated percentage of the population in England who had the coronavirus based on tests conducted between the 3rd of May and the 16th of May, the 17th of May and the 30th of May, the 31st of May and the 13th of June, and the 14th of June and the 27th of June. So this is the most up-to-date study that they've got, and that looks like bang up-to-date figures. So that is great. Let us pull that data down. So let's just wait for that to download. Good. And let's have a look and see what that says. Now that we've got the spreadsheet downloaded, we can have a look and see what it actually tells us. Here in column A, you can see we have the dates, and this is the one that we're interested in, row 11. It's got the measurements from the 14th of June to the 27th of June. Here we can see in column B, what we have is the percentage testing positive for COVID-19. And in the study, they measured that to be 0.04. Now, bear in mind that the Justice Secretary said in the morning, and the First Minister repeated at her lunchtime briefing, that they believed that the English figure was 0.185. Now, we can find no published methodology or data on any of the Scottish websites that we'd expect to find it to actually justify how they came up with that number. But on the Office of National Statistics website, where the English have actually published all of their data, we can actually see that in fact the measured value was in fact 0.04. Now, because of the uncertainties in carrying out experiments and testing of this nature, what we actually have is a confidence interval. And the confidence interval says, well, hey, we measured that percentage as being 0.04, but it might be as low as 0.02, or it might be as high as 0.08. So what we're going to do, just for fairness sake, is we are going to jump in here and we are going to ask Excel to give us the median value between 0.02 and 0.08. Close it off like that, and Excel is going to tell us that that is 0.05. So what we have here is published evidence that shows that the English rate of infection is actually 0.05.
Okay, so there you go. We can't really stand up those numbers. We have to say that on review, we think that is wrong. Okay, we think to state that England's infection rate is 5 times higher than Scotland is wrong. What we believe from the information that we can find is that the infection rate in Scotland is 0.037, provided that Scotland have followed the same methodology as they have done in England, and they've done all the things that allow them to statistically compare the documents. We'll assume they've done all that because we can't tell, but we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Assuming that all of that is true, then what we can say is that Scotland's infection rate is 0.037 and England's is 0.05. That's what we can say. Okay, and that's it for this episode. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, then hit like and subscribe. Leave comments down below, but don't fight. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.